They laughed when he walked into the boardroom. His suit looked like it came from a thrift store, his shoes were scuffed, and his tie didn't quite match. Whispers circled the room. "Ho, let this guy in. Is he lost?" No one took him seriously. Not the executives in $1,000 suits. Not the assistants peeking from behind their laptops. To them, he was just another nobody with big dreams and no real power. But what they didn't know was who he really was. He didn't flinch, didn't get defensive. He just smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. The kind that says, "You'll see." He took a seat, opened his notebook, and calmly waited for the meeting to begin. Every eye in the room watched him like he didn't belong. But he'd been in worse rooms than this. Poor neighborhoods, cold nights, rejection after rejection. He knew what it felt like to be dismissed, overlooked, underestimated. That suit wasn't just cheap. It was a reminder of where he came from and how far he'd come. As the meeting kicked off, someone finally asked, "And you are?" He stood up, walked to the window, and pointed to the tallest skyscraper in the city, shining in the morning sun. "That," he said, "is mine." The room went quiet. All the smirks disappeared. Every glance turned serious. Because sometimes the man in the cheap suit is the one who built the city. But how did he get there? What did he overcome? And why'd he never trade that old suit for a new one? This isn't just a story about success. It's a story about grit, humility, and proving the world wrong, one flaw at a time. And trust me, you haven't heard the half of it yet. His name was Daniel Reyes. Born and raised in a small, crowded apartment above a grocery store his mother cleaned at night, Daniel never had much. His clothes were hand-me-downs, his meals often stretched thin. While other kids were outside playing, Daniel was behind the counter helping restock shelves or finishing his homework under flickering lights. No silver spoon, no shortcuts, just survival and a quiet fire in his chest that kept him moving. In school, teachers called him a dreamer. He talked about designing buildings that touched the clouds, about changing skylines. Most just smiled and nodded, thinking he'd grow out of it. But he didn't. Every library book he read, every sketch he made in the back of his notebook, it all came from that one dream. To build, to leave something behind that couldn't be ignored. But dreaming wasn't enough. Doors didn't open for people like Daniel. Internships passed him over. Big firms never returned his calls. Even when he scraped together a degree in architecture by working nights and eating instant noodles, the real world didn't roll out a welcome mat. His first few pitches, laughed out of the room, his designs, called unrealistic, too bold, too ambitious. They didn't see his vision, only his cheap suit. He kept every rejection letter, framed a worst one, not out of bitterness, but as fuel. He wasn't just building buildings, he was building proof. Proof that someone with nothing could change everything. That talent, grit, and relentless focus mattered more than wealth or pedigree. Still, the world wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. Because Daniel was about to risk everything, every cent, every favor, every ounce of energy, on a single project. One so bold, so massive, it would either make his name or destroy him completely. The project was called The Horizon. A skyscraper unlike anything the city had ever seen. Glass curves, green rooftops, solar panels, public gardens that floated above the traffic. Daniel poured everything into the design. It wasn't just about height, it was about hope. A symbol for people who'd been overlooked, just like he had. But bold ideas come with big problems. Financing, permits, land battles, and most of all, doubt. No major investor wanted to touch it. Too risky, they said. Who's going to back a nobody? Behind closed doors, people called him reckless. He was warned to walk away, to play it safe, maybe take a smaller job and work his way up. But Daniel wasn't interested in waiting his turn. He started knocking on doors no one else thought to knock on. Small business owners, immigrant entrepreneurs, community leaders. People who believed in the city but had never been invited to shape it. He didn't just ask for money, he asked for belief. While Daniel fought to build up, others tried to bring him down. A rival developer, Michael Voss, watched from the sidelines. Voss owned half the skyline and didn't like the idea of someone new changing the rules. Behind the scenes, he made calls, pulled favors, leaked rumors that Daniel was in over his head. Slowly, cracks started forming. A zoning approval got delayed. A promised investor backed out. Even the media started asking, is this too much for one man to pull off? Daniel's team, loyal but tired, began to question everything. His lead engineer warned him, if one thing slips, the whole thing could fall apart. But Daniel had already bet his name, his reputation, and his future. And still, no one really knew what he was hiding up his sleeve. Not yet. The closer they got to breaking ground, the harder things became. The site was ready, the blueprints finalized, and the buzz around the horizon had started to grow. But the pressure was unlike anything Daniel had ever faced. Every step forward felt like driving a mountain. Inspections stalled for no reason. Rumors swirled that a bigger developer was planning something nearby, something that could steal the spotlight and funding. Whispers of sabotage started to circulate, and Daniel couldn't help but wonder if Voss was behind it. Investors were nervous. One even asked if Daniel would consider stepping back and letting a more experienced name take the lead. He just smiled, but inside he was burning. This wasn't just a building anymore. It was personal. His name was tied to every beam, every bolt. And now everything he'd worked for was dangling by a thread. Tensions within the team reached a boiling point. Long nights turned into arguments. His head architect threatened to quit if another delay happened. The bank started calling more often, and Daniel's phone became a constant reminder of what was at stake. If this project failed, he wouldn't just lose his career. He'd lose everything: his savings, his credibility, and worst of all, the trust of the people who believed in him when no one else did. Then came the letter. A legal challenge from Voss's firm, questioning the ownership of a narrow strip of land right through the middle of Daniel's construction zone. If it held up, it could freeze the entire project. All progress, all money, all hope. Daniel stood alone in the pouring rain that night, looking up at the skyline he still believed he could change. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from what he was about to do next. Daniel's heart pounded as he stared at the screen, reading the article over and over again. The anonymous leak, the familiar phrasing. His mind raced. It couldn't be. He trusted them. She was supposed to be loyal. Leela, the one person who knew his vision inside and out, the one who understood what the horizon meant to him, the one he thought was the ally he needed in his corner. But now it was clear. Leela had played him. She had sold him out. The realization hit harder than anything he'd experienced so far. He was standing on the edge of the abyss, and someone he thought was on his side, had pushed him. Frustration burned in his chest as he grabbed his coat and stormed out of his office. He needed to confront her. He needed answers. If she was behind this, if she was the one who'd orchestrated the leak and sabotaged his chances, there would be no forgiveness. But as he made his way to her office, something felt off. The city buzzed with its usual chaos, but today the noise seemed distant. His steps were heavier, and his thoughts swirled in confusion. It was too perfect, too much of a coincidence that Leela's involvement suddenly emerged at this critical moment. When he arrived at her office, the receptionist told him she wasn't in. No surprise there, but as he turned to leave, something caught his eye. A document on the desk, half hidden beneath a pile of papers. His heart skipped when he saw it. A blueprint, his blueprint, the one he designed for the horizon. But it wasn't just his. Someone had added their own notes, their own edits that were all too familiar. He recognized the handwriting. It was Voss's. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. Lila wasn't the only one betraying him. The man he thought was the rival was playing a much deeper game. Daniel's blood ran cold as he stared at the blueprint in his hands. Voss had made his move. The edits, the notes, it was clear now that Voss had been involved from the beginning. He'd been waiting for this moment, watching Daniel build momentum, all while quietly maneuvering to destroy everything Daniel had worked for. Voss wasn't just trying to take over the Horizon project. He was trying to erase Daniel's place in the city's future entirely. But there was one thing Voss hadn't counted on. Daniel wasn't going to fold. Not this time. He stormed out of Layla's office and headed straight to his legal team. The clock was ticking. Every minute, every second, felt like a countdown. He demanded a meeting with his investors, his real investors, the ones who'd stood by him when everyone else turned away. He needed them to know the truth. Voss was behind the sabotage, and Leela had been played too. Together, they could expose the corruption, fight back, and save the Horizon. The next few days were a blur of frantic calls, frantic meetings, and late-night strategy sessions. But it all came to a head in the courtroom. Daniel's legal team had uncovered everything: documents, phone records, even the emails that proved Voss's involvement. The Horizon wasn't just Daniel's dream anymore. It was the city's dream, and no one was going to take that from him. Just as the final pieces were falling into place, Leela walked into the courtroom. She was calm, collected, dressed in a sleek black suit. She stood by Voss's side, her expression unreadable. Daniel's heart sank. She hadn't come to apologize. She'd come to win. But in her hand, Layla held something small, an envelope. She slid it across the table toward Daniel, her eyes locking with his. Inside was a single sentence, written in her familiar handwriting: "I never betrayed you." And then it hit him, the twist. The blueprint? It wasn't Voss's. It was hers. Daniel's mind raced as he read the sentence in Leela's handwriting. "I never betrayed you." The words felt like a punch to the gut. For a moment, everything went still. It was clear now that Leela had been working against Voss, not with him. She had set him up. She had manipulated the situation to make it look like she'd betrayed him. But in reality, she'd been gathering evidence to bring down Voss, knowing that Daniel would be the one to connect the dots. She wasn't his enemy, she was his ally. And for a brief moment, he understood that she had always been on his side, even when it felt like she had walked away. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. He had been wrong. Layla's actions were calculated, risky, and bold. By standing by Voss's side, she had been playing the long game. She needed Voss to believe he had the upper hand while secretly gathering the information to expose his dirty dealings. And now she had everything they needed to take him down once and for all. The courtroom was silent as the final documents were presented. Voss's face paled when the evidence was laid bare: emails, contracts, and corrupt transactions he had been trying to hide. Daniel stood tall, his heart steady, knowing the fight wasn't just his anymore. It was for the people who believed in him, who saw the Horizon as more than just a building. The jury deliberated for hours, but it was no surprise when they found Voss guilty of fraud and corruption. The Horizon project was saved. Daniel's dream had been preserved, not because of luck, but because of the grit, loyalty, and sacrifices of those who truly believed in it. As the dust settled, Daniel stood on the rooftop of the nearly completed skyscraper, looking out at the city below. The skyline wasn't just his. It was theirs. The city had changed, but so had he. The cheap suit, the struggles, the betrayals, it had all led to this moment. And as the sun set behind the shimmering glass of the Horizon, Daniel knew one thing for certain: sometimes the greatest victories aren't the ones we expect, but the ones we fight for, against all odds.